Let me ask you something. How much of your suffering comes from reality, and how much comes from holding on? Think about that. How much pain are you still carrying because some part of you refuses to let go? Maybe it is a relationship that ended, a painful memory, an expectation that never became real, or a version of life you thought you were supposed to have. Most people believe suffering comes from loss, but Taoist wisdom points somewhere deeper. Very often, suffering does not begin with loss itself. It begins with resistance, with the mind saying, "This should not have happened. This should not be changing. I am not ready to lose this." That resistance creates tension, and tension becomes suffering. The truth is simple. Life is always moving. Nothing stays the same. Not people, not circumstances, not emotions, not even you. Yet we keep trying to freeze everything in place. And that is where exhaustion begins. Today, we will explore the power of letting go. Not as weakness, not as giving up, but as wisdom. Because sometimes peace does not come from fixing everything. Sometimes peace begins the moment you stop fighting reality. Chapter 1. Why letting go feels so hard. Here is what most people miss. Letting go is rarely hard because of the thing itself. It is hard because of what that thing means to us. We do not only hold on to people, we hold on to identity, to certainty, to emotional security, to stories. Stories about who we are, stories about what should have happened, stories about what we deserve. That is why even painful things can feel impossible to release. You can know something is hurting you and still cling to it. Why? Because familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. Read that again. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. That is why people stay in toxic relationships, why they replay old conversations, why they keep chasing closure from people who will never give it. The mind prefers what feels familiar, even when familiar means suffering. Taoism teaches that attachment creates struggle. The tighter your grip, the greater the tension. Think about holding sand in your hand. If your hand stays open, the sand rests there naturally. But the moment you squeeze, it begins slipping away. Life often works the same way. The more desperately we try to control outcomes, the more anxious we become. The more we force, the more resistance we feel. And slowly, we exhaust ourselves. That is why Taoism returns to one powerful idea. Stop forcing. Not because nothing matters, but because force often moves us further from peace. Look at water. Water does not fight the river. It does not argue with obstacles. When something blocks its path, it adapts. It flows around. Over time, even stone yields to water, not because water is aggressive, but because it moves with reality. That is real strength. Strength is not always force. Sometimes strength is flexibility. Sometimes it is acceptance. And sometimes real strength means knowing when to release. Because holding on to what no longer belongs in your life can quietly become its own form of suffering. Chapter 2. The illusion of control. How much of your stress comes from things you can actually control, and how much comes from trying to control things you cannot. Most people spend enormous energy fighting uncertainty. They want guarantees. They want predictable outcomes. They want life to follow a plan. But life rarely works that way. People change. Circumstances shift. Plans fall apart. Unexpected things happen. And when reality refuses to match our expectations, frustration begins. This is where suffering often grows, not from events themselves, but from our need for control. Taoism teaches something radical. Control is often an illusion. You may influence certain things. You may make wise choices. You may prepare. You may plan. But you cannot control everything. You cannot control other people. You cannot control timing. You cannot control how life unfolds. And the harder you try, the more exhausted you become. Think about how often anxiety begins. It usually starts with a thought. What if this goes wrong? What if I lose this? What if things do not work out? The mind starts predicting, planning, defending, preparing for every possible outcome. But most of those imagined outcomes never happen. Still, your body carries the stress as if they were real. That is the cost of attachment to control. You suffer twice, once in imagination and once in reality, sometimes even more. Taoist wisdom offers another path. Instead of gripping tighter, loosen. Instead of forcing certainty, allow uncertainty. That does not mean becoming passive. It means trusting life enough to stop fighting every unknown. Look at nature. A tree that refuses to bend in strong wind often breaks, but bamboo survives. Why? Because it bends, it yields, it adapts. That flexibility keeps it alive. Humans often resist what nature understands so well. We mistake rigidity for strength, but rigidity breaks, flexibility endures. Real peace comes when you stop demanding certainty from life, because certainty was never promised. The more you accept that, the lighter you become. And sometimes, letting go begins with something simple. Admitting this truth: I cannot control everything, and I no longer need to. Chapter 3. Attachment creates suffering. Here is something uncomfortable to admit. Most pain is not caused by the event itself. It is caused by attachment. Attachment to how things were. Attachment to how things should be. Attachment to who we believe we are. And attachment is subtle. Sometimes you do not even realize you are attached. You think you are protecting something important. But often you are protecting an identity. Maybe you are attached to being needed, to being admired, to being right, to being loved by a specific person, to being seen in a certain way. And the moment life threatens that image, pain appears. Why? Because the ego feels attacked. Taoism invites us to look deeper. Who is suffering? The situation or the identity attached to it? Think about rejection. Rejection hurts. But what hurts more? The event itself or the story your mind creates? Maybe the story says, I am not enough. I failed. I was not chosen. Now suffering has expanded. Not because reality became worse, but because identity became involved. This is why attachment is powerful. It turns temporary events into lasting suffering. The Tao teaches impermanence. Everything changes, everything moves, everything transforms. Seasons change, rivers flow, clouds pass, even mountains slowly erode. Nature does not resist change. Only humans insist that things should stay the same, and that resistance creates pain. The more attached you become, the more fragile your peace becomes. Because now, your peace depends on conditions. It depends on people behaving a certain way, on life unfolding a certain way, on outcomes matching your expectations. That is not freedom, that is dependency. Real freedom begins when peace no longer depends on control, when your inner state is no longer chained to external events. This does not mean you stop caring. Taoism does not teach indifference. It teaches non-attachment. There is a difference. You can love deeply, without clinging. You can care fully, without controlling. You can appreciate something, without trying to possess it forever. That is what many people misunderstand. Letting go does not mean you stop loving. Sometimes, letting go is the purest form of love, because love without attachment allows freedom, for yourself and for others. The more you release attachment, the lighter your heart becomes, and slowly, suffering loses its grip. Chapter 4. Stop fighting reality. Think about how much energy people waste arguing with reality. Something happens, and almost instantly, the mind starts resisting. This should not be happening. This is unfair. Why now? Why me? Why did this happen at all? Sound familiar? Most suffering begins there. Not in the event, but in the argument with the event. Reality says one thing, your mind demands another, and that inner conflict creates pain. Taoism teaches something most people struggle to accept. Reality does not change just because you resist it. Resistance does not undo what happened. It only multiplies suffering. Think about being caught in heavy rain. You can stand there, angry, frustrated, complaining that it should be sunny, but the rain keeps falling. Your frustration changes nothing. Now imagine something different. Instead of fighting the rain, you accept it. The rain is here. This is what is happening. What matters now is how you move with it. That shift changes everything. Acceptance is often misunderstood. Many people hear acceptance and think, so I should just give up? No, acceptance is not surrender in a hopeless sense. It is clarity. It means seeing reality exactly as it is, without denial, without fantasy, without emotional resistance. Only then can wise action begin. Because when the mind stops fighting what already exists energy returns, clarity returns, peace returns. This is why Taoism values harmony. Harmony is not about controlling life, it is about moving with life, like a skilled surfer riding a wave. The surfer does not command the ocean. He studies it, feels it, moves with it. If he fights the wave, he loses. Life works the same way. The more you fight reality, the more exhausted you become. The more you flow with reality, the less friction you create. That does not mean life becomes easy. It means suffering becomes lighter. Because now, you are no longer fighting two battles, only one. The situation itself, not the situation, plus your resistance to it. And sometimes, the first step toward peace is incredibly simple. Stop saying, this should not be happening, and start asking, this is happening. How do I move wisely now? That question changes everything. Chapter 5. The freedom of release. What are you still carrying that no longer needs to be carried? Be honest. Maybe it is resentment, maybe regret, maybe guilt, maybe anger toward someone who hurt you, maybe anger toward yourself. For many people, the heaviest burden is not what happened. It is what they continue carrying afterward. They replay the past again and again and again, as if repetition will somehow change the ending. But it never does. The past remains the past. No amount of mental replay can rewrite it. Yet the mind keeps returning. Why? Because part of us believes holding on protects us. We think, if I keep remembering, I will not be hurt again. But often the opposite happens. By refusing to release the pain, we keep hurting ourselves. Taoism offers a different path, release. Not because the past did not matter, not because the wound was small, but because carrying it forever serves no purpose. There is profound freedom in release. Because the moment you let go, the past loses authority over the present. It no longer controls your emotional state. It no longer dictates your peace. This does not happen overnight. Letting go is often gradual, layer by layer, attachment by attachment, story by story, until one day you notice something. What once controlled you no longer has power. The memory may remain, but the suffering fades, and that is freedom, real freedom. Not when life becomes perfect, but when inner peace stops depending on the past. Sometimes letting go looks quiet, no dramatic moment, no grand closure, just a gentle decision. I will not carry this anymore. I release what I cannot change. I release what no longer serves me. I release what is already gone. And in that release, space appears. Space for peace, space for presence, space for life to move again, because empty hands can finally receive something new. Chapter 6. Living in flow. So what happens? When you truly let go, what changes? At first, maybe nothing outside of you. The same people may still be there, the same responsibilities, the same uncertainties. Life may look exactly the same, but something inside shifts. You stop moving from fear, you stop reacting from desperation, you stop chasing control, and in that space, a different way of living becomes possible. You begin to flow. This is the art of Taoism, living in harmony with the Tao, with the natural order of life, not forcing, not resisting, not clinging, just moving with clarity, with presence, with trust. This does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean doing nothing. Flow is not laziness. Flow is intelligent action without unnecessary struggle. Think about the most peaceful people you have met. They still face problems. They still experience loss. They still feel pain. But there is something different about them. They do not panic easily. They do not fight every moment. They do not collapse when life changes. Why? Because they understand something important. Life is movement, and peace comes from moving with it, not against it. When you stop resisting change, change stops feeling like an enemy. When you stop clinging to certainty, uncertainty becomes less frightening. When you stop demanding permanence, impermanence becomes easier to accept, and something beautiful happens. You become lighter, calmer, more present. You start noticing small things again. The morning light, a quiet breath, the sound of rain, a moment of stillness, things that were always there but hidden beneath mental noise. This is one of the greatest gifts of letting go, presence, because attachment pulls you away from now. It drags you into the past. or throws you into the future, but letting go returns you here. To this moment, to this breath, to this life, and this moment is the only place peace has ever existed. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, only here. So, what are you still holding on to? A person, a memory, a wound, a version of yourself that no longer exists? Whatever it is, ask yourself honestly, is holding on bringing peace or pain? Sometimes the hardest thing to release is the thing that is hurting us most. But here is the paradox. The moment you loosen your grip, peace begins to return, not all at once, but little by little, breath by breath, choice by choice. You begin to understand something Taoist wisdom has taught for centuries. Peace does not come from controlling life. Peace comes from flowing with it, from trusting change, from accepting impermanence, from releasing what no longer belongs. And maybe letting go is not about losing something. Maybe it is about returning to yourself, lighter, softer, freer. So if life is asking you to release something, listen, trust the process, and allow yourself to flow, because sometimes the greatest strength is not in holding on, it is in knowing when to let go.